Hello and welcome to another episode of the CG Garage. This is episode number 370, featuring Andrew Orloff, who is VFX Supervisor, but more importantly, the owner of Zoic. And it was really great to see him. I actually want to thank Aaron Kuferman for recommending him and connecting me with him so that I would be able to do this podcast, although Zoic has been a customer of Chaos for many, many years, and they're a really great partner. So it was really cool to talk to him. But it was really cool to listen to his backstory, right, Kristen?
Yeah, I had no idea. I mean, we've worked with them for so many years, and so this was a great podcast, just learning how he started off himself, which was like kind of PAing, doing graphic design, and then he started learning after hours at the place he worked how to use Alias Power Animator on a SGI, and then he went on to like work in television broadcast, visual effects, which he's very passionate about, and he was actually the first technical director on South Park, which is cool. And then kind of after his contracts and freelances expired, he and his friends decided they just wanted to start a company that they wanted to work for and that had a passion for broadcast visual effects. And he kind of goes into that, and now they have 450 employees worldwide. And they actually worked from home before COVID, and he really goes into that, how it's better. So that was just interesting how they have that all situated and how they kind of have a hybrid office. And yeah, and you guys kind of talk about real-time development and how they get their jobs now and what discussions look like in pre with the directors and DPs. So
yeah, it's really, really interesting. And I think what was one of the things that, like I always discover new things when I talk to people, which is why I love doing this podcast. But one of the things that was interesting that he told me about what changed, because obviously Zoic is well known for doing a lot of episodic work, but episodic work used to be very seasonal because, you'd have this fall is when the episode comes out, and then you have, your pilot season and all that. So it was very much like this up and flow. But ever since streaming happened, those seasons kind of changed and went away. So it made it such a much more sort of like stable. There's always sort of like something going on in some way. So it was really interesting to see, to hear those stories and see what's going on there. So I loved it. I thought it was a great interview with Andrew, and I really appreciate him coming on. Now we got something special going on with Exceptional Minds. Kristen, why don't you tell people a little bit about that?
Yeah, so April is Autism Awareness or Autism Acceptance Month. In Chaos, we are highlighting some of their upcoming graduates at Exceptional Minds. And this week we have Andrew Rosengard, and he will be graduating with an emphasis in VFX. And you can check his work out on Creatively. And we'll link his Creatively link and Real link in our podcast page. But yeah, we just want to help the students with finding jobs after they graduate. And you can also find out more about Exceptional Minds at exceptional-minds.org and go to social.
Perfect. I think it's really cool. I love working with Exceptional Minds. I think what they're doing is absolutely fantastic in terms of training people who are on the spectrum and figuring out the best ways to train them and the challenges there, but also being able to get the most out of these amazing people that otherwise would have a hard time finding the right place or finding acceptance. And the other thing I really like about Exceptional Minds is not only do they help specifically the people that are being trained in this area, but they actually help employers understand how to work with people on the spectrum and how to get the most out of them as well that way. So I just thought they're a wonderful group. I'm happy to help them. I'm really happy to feature Andrew's reel this week. So what we'll do is, if you're watching the video format of this, we did this last week. If you're watching the video format of this, we will be featuring this his reel right after we do this intro, and then we'll jump into the podcast after that. But go ahead and check it out and just go to their site, exceptional-minds.org. So really happy to have them on board for that. Now we do have, and obviously you guys may have seen, there's an announcement that came out last week about Chaos and a merger. If you want to know more about that, you can definitely go find out about the next merger that happened recently that is available on our website. So just go to chaos.com to find more about that. But if people want to know more about the podcast, where can they go, Kristen?
You can go to facebook.com/cggaragepodcast or chaos.com/cggarage. And if you'd like to watch us, go to youtube.com/chaosgrouptv.
Perfect. And if you guys have any other ideas for podcasts or suggestions, please let us know. Just go to labs@chaosgroup.com. That's our email. Again, that is labs@chaosgroup.com. And of course, leave us an Apple review and a rating. That's always appreciated. But otherwise, please enjoy this amazing podcast with Andrew Orloff of Zoic.
Welcome to another CG Garage, where the Chaos Group talks. You'll know it's over when the last bucket drops. We're gonna fire off rays in high dynamic range. We know that ambient occlusion is passe. Global illumination won't lead you astray. And while image-based lighting is really swell, you need to make sure everything has Fresnel.
Well, thanks for doing this, Andrew. I really appreciate you coming on and talking about stuff. Obviously, I've been wanting to talk to, people at Zoic, and I have spoken to people at Zoic a lot. But really talking about what you guys are doing, and you've been there since the very beginning. Am I right?
Yeah, since day one. I'm one of the founders and one of the owners. Yeah. And currently technically the president of the BC office and one of the executive creative directors. So
that's a lot of hats.
Yeah. And I'm also leading the charge on our effort to integrate Unreal Engine in real time into our pipeline right now.
Cool. I definitely want to talk about that as well. Mm-hmm. But how did you get into computer graphics? Like, when did that all start?
Well, it's one of those stories where, it's 1977, San Francisco, California, and I'm sitting there watching The Crawl for the original Star Wars movie, and just was completely enamored by it, and just ravenously sought out and devoured any information at the time that was relevant to that, mostly, magazines like Fangoria, Cinema Fantastique. There are no DVD special features, or there was no Gnomon or Full Sail or anything like that, or Art Institute. So, and I started making my own stuff, on Super 8, Claymation, messing around, and decided our public school system had just recently been delivered a fresh new batch of Apple IIe computers with dual disk drives.
Nice. And
so I was very interested in that, and stayed after class and said, you know what, this whole thing of art and filmmaking and computers is for me, and it's been a lifelong obsession of mine. I ended up going to UCLA Film School, centering in filmmaking and animation, and it's been my only job ever, other than working in a movie theater when I was in high school.
Okay, well, that's still in the movies.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. So when did you get your first start as your first job in visual effects?
My first real job in visual effects, I had some computer graphics experience. I was working with a company that was converting movies to CD-ROM. And at the time, I didn't know anything about, other than what I could do on my Apple. At that point, I had purchased Macintosh SE from my my roommate when we graduated. I bought it from him, and I was learning Photoshop, and doing all that stuff, but there wasn't anything moving, on there. And I was PAing and taking, also working, doing graphic design. It was something that at the time, if you were into art and you knew how to use a Macintosh, you could get a graphic design job. You didn't have to have much more training than that. So I was doing some graphic design and covers, and there was a guy doing UI design. And he was working on a Silicon Graphics workstation. Right. And I was just peeking over his shoulder, and I knew, this was just before Jurassic Park came out, and I knew that these were the machines that they were using to kind of do some of the stuff up to that point. And so I asked if I could stay after hours to learn on the machine for free. So I did that at night, learned how to use Alias Power Animator on an SGI. And that at that time, the user base for that software was so low that I got onto a list, funny people from way back, Dave Marin, who's now I work with. We worked together on our Unreal projects. He was there, and I was one of the people that they would put out, when they sold the machines. Like, this person knows how to work this machine. call them. And so quickly I got, and the interesting part for me is not only has my whole career been in visual effects, but my whole career has been television, broadcast visual effects. Because my first job, and this is a very, this group of people ended up doing a lot of things. We were working at a post facility. At that time, most of the visual effects were connected to the dub houses and the post facilities as an extra service. And we were working on Saban shows. We were working on Power Rangers. We were working on VR Troopers. We were working on Beetleborgs. And we were taking the footage from Japan and recreating, a lot of the vehicles and some of the monsters in CG and handing them off to flame compositors and cutting it together with the footage that they shot in Valencia. But a lot of people that ended up having big positions at Sony, working with the visual effects producer that ended up working on Game of Thrones, this Encore, so many folks. We had a little crucible there of learning while we were working when we were younger. Let's say it was a lot younger now, because that was 1994, 1995. Yep, around there.
Yeah. Okay, so that's an interesting start of your career, and definitely exciting. Yeah. Where did things go from there? Like, what sort of led you to the place where you ended up?
Yeah, I bounced around a lot, because the easiest thing to do at that point was to freelance. So I bounced around. I was one of the original technical directors on South Park. That was a fun gig. Nice. I did a lot of Super Bowl commercials, a lot of music videos, jumping around from, 525 and Pixel Envy, which was later became Lola and Hydraulics. So just getting to know everybody in that time period and bouncing around. And I eventually landed on a staff job working at some folks with a company called Radium. And we had been working together. That was Lonnie Perister, Chris Jones. We had been working together off and on. I was a really big fan of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and they did that show. So I would work with them on a freelance basis, and then made that permanent in around 2000, and that's when we were doing a bunch of music videos, and then the pilot for Firefly came along, and then our contracts expired there, and we decided to take a run at starting our own company, made by working artists with an eye towards bringing a passion, particularly towards broadcast visual effects, and also just making the company that we wanted to work for. Basically, it was the simple idea, and that was 20 years ago, almost to the day, pretty close to it. It'll be 20 years ago this year.
That's really great. Yeah. That's really great. In fact, that's interesting, because Chaos or V-Ray is about to celebrate its 20th anniversary
nice.
this year. So,
Yeah.
So, but anyway, that's really fascinating. So before we get too far, when you were doing CG, I mean, obviously you were supervising a bunch of stuff, but what was your thing? Were you more of a compositor, a lighter,
Interesting.
animator?
and this comes full circle because when I talk about real time, it's kind of happening again. I mean, I was talking to a friend of mine, my college roommate, is one of the environment supervisors over at Tippett, and we chat. And we were talking about real time, and he's like, every time technology makes this huge jump, kind of nobody knows really what to do with it, and when people come into it, they approach it very generalized.
Right.
There's not a lot of definition between the tasks. So aside from, we all needed to know how to composite because we had to test our composites before, but that was just early command line shake. It was kind of the type of tools we were using, but we literally did as a CG artist, a power animator user, we did everything. We did all the modeling, all the texturing, all the camera tracking by eye, by hand. There's no tracking software, all the animation, all the lighting, rigging, everything, dynamics. And that has served me pretty well because as I got into quickly, that put me in a position of being a CG supervisor since I had a good handle on the whole process. And then shortly after that, visual effects supervision. And I've been visual effects supervising pretty much since we started Zoic.
Okay.
And creative directing at that level. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you start this company. You said that you start a company that you'd actually want to work for, which is a great way of putting it. Where was your first office?
Well, very briefly, we were in Sunset Gower Studios, and in a very magnanimous and gesture, another company, Eden Effects, which we knew a lot of people, they were working on. They were a Lightwave house that was doing a lot of the Star Trek stuff. Sub let us some space, and there were 12 of us, and we didn't stay there for very long. We were there for about 6 months, I think, maybe less. And then we used that time to find ourselves. And we were, our render farm was racked up in, 2x4s that we had got from Home Depot, down in Hollywood. And it was very, very bootstrappy, very bootstrappy. We were all on top of each other. We named the company there. And then we found a lease on a place in Culver City, down by across the river from the Seas Candy, down in the in that district there, where Pittard Sutherland was there. Now it's all Apple and everybody's down there. We're still in the same space.
Okay, so you've been in that office since the beginning, then.
Yep. From just about the beginning. Right. Yeah, it was editorial space, and we've been there for a while. In 2010. We made a small investment in Canada to help support the work we were doing for Battlestar Galactica, previs and support comp, to help do the tax credit. Then we got a bunch of other shows that I was heavily involved in, that we did as a split between BC and LA for the pilot, and then they picked up the show that was Once Upon a Time, which was like a huge amount of CG work. They wanted it to be essentially all in Canada, and we only had a staff of about 25 people at that time. And we needed to go up to more like 200 people to do a show of that scale. So that was in 2012. I relocated to run the BC office. So I spent half of Zoic's years, running things in from the episodic side in LA, and then half of it running the production side in BC. Wow.
Okay. Well, that's huge. But okay, just go back a little bit. What was the first gig you guys got at Zoic? Like, what was the first show you guys started with?
We had a great start. Very lucky. Yeah, so grateful. We started with Firefly.
That's a big,
Right. So we started with Angel, and we started with Buffy. Those three shows. Okay. We had all of Joss Whedon's television shows at that point. That's what we used as kind of collateral to start the company. And then quickly, reputation kind of, so we started doing a lot more work for Warner Brothers and getting involved in Battlestar and other shows that were really popular at the time, like CSI, fun stuff like Dr. Horrible, like there was a lot of good projects then.
Right. Now, how did you guys have a relationship with Joss Whedon? Like, how did you guys get that gig as your first gig?
So Lonnie, one of our the other owners and co-founder, was the visual effects supervisor on that show since the beginning.
Okay.
So he was on set with Joss and continued a relationship all through that early television period. So that was the connection. We also did the Firefly movie, Serenity.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, of course. I was going to ask that. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's really great. Those are great shows. So so you guys had your mark for success right from the beginning. It sounds like.
Yeah. We had a great start off the block for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So those are sort of, like you said, those are some of your first shows, and you guys expanded your Vancouver. I mean, how big is your Vancouver office now? Is this still around 200 or?
Well, we're approaching 450 worldwide right now, and I think about approaching 300 of those are in Vancouver. We have more people than we've ever had, and we have more people in Vancouver than we've had. We're about the highest we've ever been, and it should be noted that we are entirely work from home. We're hybrid technically. We do offer office space, but we offer all of our employees the opportunity to work from home full time, and we will be continuing that into the future.
Okay. That's interesting. So how does that work? Because I know that's been, at the beginning, before the pandemic, it was impossible to work from home because you have all these security measures, et cetera. And then obviously you had to work from home, and now all of a sudden it's totally fine.
Yeah. One of the things, and this was a strategy that we put into place. Our CTO, Saker Clipston, is very you guys know him, and he's really smart and just a real kind of like out of the box thinker, and he really grateful that he was able to kind of cast into the future, because and I just have to step back for a moment, as we expanded the BC footprint, what we found is that folks wanted, to work in a nice place. The clients, time wanted to come to some, you had to kind of be in one of these gas town, nice offices to kind of attract people. And it really became pretty apparent almost immediately that the equipment was taking up so much space that didn't make sense to rent, high-end gas town office space to put electronics in there, to put machines in there. And aside from that, every time we did it and every time we upgraded, we had heat issues, just because the amount of AC that we need to cool everything is just not. It was like we had to pay for, TI, and the building wouldn't really pitch in for it. So Saker was brilliant, saying like, this is what we're going to do. We're going to go all in. We're going to find a location that can support our equipment, put all the render nodes, all the servers, and all the workstations in one location, direct fiber to there, and Teradici from the office to the colo. So we haven't had, even before COVID came along, a workstation on or under a desk in 6 years in the Vancouver office, and we were in the process of converting and rolling through all the equipment in the LA and the New York offices to do the same thing. So we actually were within a week of the pandemic rolling around. We had already had the security clearance for the Teradici boxes, and yes, we had to make sure that we put things in place. We had to reprogram all the boxes and hand them out, but when a lot of other places were scrambling to get PC over IP connections and, kind of go through the security process of approving material being at a home, like our material is never at a home. It's still in the colo. It's exactly where it was before COVID. So it was a little bit easy for us to convince, and we're still, they're changing their policies, and they're doing what they need to do, and they're auditing. But and since then, even we've upgraded a lot of our equipment, our gateways, and our ability to balance all the. It's one thing to have all the requests coming from one place, but it's another thing to have every request for information coming in from a different source. So there was a certain amount of tech around managing that, and then also, upgrading our thin clients and our boxes to support 4K monitors and to support the level of fidelity that we need as far as playback and streaming. But we've got it pretty much locked down. Even our ZBrush artists and our map painters, which have, those are the folks that really need low latency. Are able to work from home effectively. And if they need to, for any reason, for team meetings and kickoffs, or if they just want to break, a lot of the, especially the Vancouver, some of them have pretty small setups and kids at home. And so they prefer to, come into the office at least a couple times a week. And we have plenty of before that in Vancouver, just with the expansion and contraction of project-based visual effects work, there were times when we were like contracting WeWork to move people in there. And that was actually more of a pain in the butt than expanding our infrastructure to get people to, work from home.
Right. Well, that's very interesting. So where is the colo, or can you tell me?
It's in East Vancouver. It's an aware.
Okay, so it's in Vancouver.
Yeah, it's in Vancouver.
Now, so it just does bring up some questions. Now, everyone's working from home or whatever is going on. And, you mentioned earlier you moved to Vancouver due to tax incentives. Is that going to be a thing still? Do you still... you don't have an office there. Anyone can work from home.
They have to work in province, and they're still, I think, and we don't have a lot of exposure there right now. Really big tax incentive places, even though a lot of visual effects places are still working from home, like Montreal are getting a lot of action right now. And there's two things that contribute to that. There's the tax incentive, especially for, the one thing about Vancouver is shooting in Vancouver is, when you're shooting in Vancouver, you can benefit a lot easier from the Vancouver tax incentives. And they still work when people working at home. They have to be in the province and within certain, and it has to be, all boring stuff with the CRA, the Canadian, version of the IRS, but all that stuff has all been worked out, and we're very careful about who we hire and where they are. It gives them more flexibility, but not infinite flexibility. And the other thing that drives people to work in the Canadian market of visual effects is the exchange, just flat the exchange rate. Just the fact that the rates aren't much different in Canadian dollars and American dollars for comparable skill sets, and the American dollar is stronger, right now, and that helps. The currency conversion helps.
That's interesting. I'm just hearing more and more stories of people just hiring from people from all over the world and not really caring where they come from anymore.
It's definitely an interesting business proposition, because one thing that has gotten more complicated because of that issue is, we would get clients and they'd be like, it has to be 100% Canada. We can't give you the job unless it is. But that's become much more flexible because of that thing. And now there's much more complicated formulas that our EPs and our bidding producers have to deal with, of negotiating. There's a lot of negotiating in the industry right now. How much can I get in, tax incentive? And they're splitting the shows, which is another, we've always prided ourselves on being one company, even though because there's a bunch of different ways to do it. We've seen people, split off companies and have different offices, and, a lot of, especially I think, in the early 2010s, when that expansion was going on, the idea is that it was an office that was owned by the same people, but it was really a different facility.
Sure.
It had its own, they were walled off. There wasn't a lot of sharing of assets. There wasn't a lot of sharing of pipeline. I saw companies that would even be on different softwares for their for 3D in one location for another. And you just go depending on where you were and what you needed and where your relationships were. We set out to do it differently. And because of the co-location issue, it's made us easy to, our servers are synced, for example. Our license servers are synced. Our shotgun database is shared. Our shot development and our shot review software is shared. So we had that in place, and we had been operating as one company, but even more so, now that we are in the world of Teams and the world of being able to contact each other at a moment's notice, those lines that were remaining are now completely down. And we have mixed teams, people being LA folks being supervised from VC supervising from New York. It's all mixed together.
Right.
And it's actually working out, quite well, and even more pipeline unification and tool standardization than we've had, previously.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I don't know if you're actually in LA or Vancouver right now. So it doesn't seem to matter.
Yes. For full disclosure, honestly, I'm in neither. I actually am in my home in Bellingham, Washington, which is just south of the Canadian border, about 50 miles away from Vancouver. So I'm in the United States, neither in LA nor in Vancouver at the moment.
So there you go. So that's exactly the point. It's like you could be in Culver City right now.
Yeah, exactly.
So but I don't need to get but is so all these offices are sharing the same network, right? Mm-hmm. In the same way, and all the same assets, and mm-hmm. they're all working out of that. So it's actually kind of great. It's really
it really is a nice collaboration, and we've had a lot of good movement between the offices. Folks who tried BC and want to go back to LA, or people in LA that want to go to BC or New York. So we have a lot of cross pollination.
Awesome.
In our offices at the artist and supervisor level, and that's nice to see as well.
Yeah. I do remember when with Mike Romy, I used to
mm-hmm.
with him all the time.
Oh yeah.
And when he was giving us a tour of Zoic and seeing that giant machine room that was in the office there, and it was like, you don't need that anymore.
Yeah, that's all moved. We have that space, but it's a lot of the equipment's moved to our LA colo just because it's easier to administrate. We have servers in each location, and they're just constantly syncing, and we've written a bunch of tool sets to transfer information we can render from either facility, as well as utilizing Google Cloud services.
Right.
And that's been also another thing that kind of helps us. It used to be so nerve-wracking from a business point of view to have to rent these, because the challenge as a broadcast visual effects company for many years, and now it's changed so radically with streaming, was the seasonality of it.
Yes.
We would get shows in the fall, and we'd come up to a kind of a October very busy time where there were mid-season finales, have a little bit of a hiatus, come back, ramp up to the finales, which were happening at the same time pilots were being developed. And that for many, many years at Zoic, the traditional pilot season, which is greenlight at the end of February, shoot in March, deliver at the end of April, no matter how big
mm-hmm.
this was. I mean, there are huge pilots, Battlestar, Firefly,
right, yeah.
Once upon a time, giant pilots that were done this way. And so we'd have to really kind of figure out how we were going to render all of this stuff in time. And projecting how much to rent was really tricky, and the utilization on it was not great, because you'd have to, it was such a fast turnaround. You'd end up having to kind of get it a month before and then keep it for the time that it was busy. And then, let it go, but then you'd have it, like that would be partway through a month, and then you'd have to pay for the rest of it anyway. So the utilization on those render nodes, aside from the fact that it was incredibly expensive and nerve-wracking, was low. Like, I think we did it, I remember you mentioned when Mike Romy was with us, we'd sit there and look at it and say like, we're using these like maybe 50% of the time that we have the rental period that they're pegged. And being able to split and distribute between all the colos and then burst with cloud services has been, super transformational for us. And also the fact that the seasonality aspect of the business has reduced because they just don't make the pilots, and that there's not as much pressure on pilots for broadcast visual effects. There's mostly full awards from streaming services that we get put on either as a sole vendor or one of a crew of vendors. So that's been probably the biggest transformation since we started Zoic, is streaming.
Yeah, well, that's good. So it definitely makes
it is
a little bit.
And it's helped us make longer offers and keep staff people, and it's easier on because the other problem that there's a people problem with the old pilot season model in broadcast visual effects, which is just like, where do you get people for 3 weeks? Just to jam, and then you also can't really expect people. The amount of overtime that would cause was absurd. It was just not, I don't know how we did it for all those years.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah,
I can imagine. And it was such a feast or famine situation. Constantly, and it was kind of crazy. But I do remember like the days, when, back when I was doing a lot more VFX, it's like of renting those boxes that just came with like all these blades. They felt like concert boxes, and it just sat there and you plugged in all these Ethernet cables and hoped for the best. And they were loud as hell.
Loud, hot, the whole 9 yards.
All those problems. So you guys said you're starting to use some more cloud computing as well, right? So you guys using GCP, you mentioned?
Yeah, we have, and we've integrated that into our pipeline, so we can launch directly, and the wranglers can wrangle from that, and that's all security cleared and everything. And then, the other thing that we're working on right now is real time, which is helping us, with those render crunches, as well. As much stuff as we can push to a final pixel, the better. And we're starting to get into that right now.
Right. Okay. Well, I am curious about that. So obviously, the real time has, or the idea of real time has become a big deal right now. And you guys are definitely, I know you are looking into it quite a bit, which is exciting. I've been definitely looking at real time in terms of the virtual production ideas of what real time can offer. So I'm very curious about your thoughts on that. So what are some of your thoughts on real time and how it came about, and which areas of this are you inspecting?
Yes, yeah, I think that we're approaching it, and it's a pretty wide open. It's kind of a bit of a, as I said before, this again comes full circle. Like everything is so generalized right now. We'll have real-time employees that are animating and lighting and and cutting shots together in the sequencer and just doing a kind of a wide variety of tasks, which is interesting because it brings new people in and also reinvigorates some people who have been in the industry for a bit. So we have, just to give you kind of a footprint, we have 25 going on up to about 30 employees that pretty much work in Engine full time. At Zoic, we look at it as a different department that the other departments access when they need real-time material. And we service, 3 different areas of visual effects. The first one is the interactive visualization area, which includes traditional pre-viz, tech-viz, and then also post-viz and editorial assistance for temps, and takes us all the way through that, as well as VAD, virtual art department, that kind of stuff. We've been able to do a lot of look development inside of a real-time environment. It's quick, it's snappy, it's interactive. And this part of this side of the triangle that I'm about to describe really is about interfacing with creators. That has been, you can see the shows that we work on, from Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, Firefly, CSI, like they're all these kind of what I call tonally specific shows. Like that's been our bread and butter. When you have a show and you need visual effects design that supports the storytelling, Sweet Tooth is another show that we do that has that very specific tone that's carried by visual effects. There's a lot of discussions and a lot of iteration, and having tools in real time to interact directly with our clients, whether they be supervisors or executive producers or both, is really helpful for our relationships because we are a creative, relationship-focused visual effects house. And so from a communication and a visual communication standpoint, it's proved to be a very, very good tool. And then also from a budget management and schedule standpoint, even though streaming, some people say, oh, streaming is just like features coming to the TV. Well, to your TV screen, it's like, well, we've worked on both, and Zoic does do feature work. We're known for our broadcast work, and I've been in the business long enough to know that streaming is way closer to broadcast than it is to a movie for a lot of what a lot of the work that we do.
Sure.
Some of it is, but a lot of it is still very tight turnarounds and not a lot of time for iteration. So visualization and putting it in the look dev process and talking to directors and DOPs and all that stuff has been great for us. So we do a lot of that. And it's important to us, and it's an added benefit to be involved in visualization. We still do tons of stuff where we work with other previous companies, Third Floor, Halon. That's great. We love them. When we do it our own and we start in Engine, we have parity with our assets, and we're using the assets we're going to use in the show, and we've written our own tools, and using our visualization team in Unreal as a creative layout approach where we do most of our camera work, almost all of it for our all CG sequences or super heavy CG sequences, and exporting that layout, camera animation, and blocking animation. We've written a lot of tools and made a lot of deals with the asset providers to be able to pick up where we left off when we go into the traditional linear pipeline. So that's something that really helps, which is like, I think a lot of people have had that experience where you do the previs or you do your storyboards and like, that's going to be great. And then you see it out of the Maya camera or the Houdini camera or whatever. And you're like, well, it's not exactly what I thought it was going to be. And here it's like, we're getting a much more one-to-one relationship between our visualization that we do and the prep and the editorial part of the process. And also just getting a lot of value and really, really narrowing down to what the ask is, because a lot of these quick turnaround shows, especially when we do something that's pilot, and you're really trying to get something out there fast and you're trying to get visual information and avoid the dreaded place in the cut that's just a black frame that says like insert cool visual effects from Zoic here. We want to put something in there that has lighting information, that has timing information, that has pacing, that might have some effects in there. I mean, it's never going to go to broadcast in that case, but it tells the story of what's going on. So, and working, first with the prep to do the previs, and then we've developed a bunch of tools to render Unreal Engine or could be any real-time material over the top of a plate and get kind of slap comps and post-viz comps together very quickly, which is super helpful for studio cuts and testing cuts, which is something that is a challenge for broadcast visual effects, getting the effects story developed enough so that an audience that is expecting final visual effects can see what's happening, but not break the bank. If you say like, what, this scene isn't working for whatever reason, we're going to cut it down, or we're going to omit these shots. The typical finances around that are jamming through the traditional pipeline and do temps as well as you can. And then any shots that get cut get billed for hours done up to that point for partial work. And so nobody feels great, even me as an owner, charging somebody for something they're not going to use. It doesn't
Right.
and everybody just kind of, and it really helps, because the billing for that is sequence based, and we're able to get it close enough that they can make a lot of editorial choices without impacting the budget. And then it's an execution phase, from that point forward, because you know what you're going to get. So that's one part of it, is the visualization piece. The next part is the virtual production piece, which is where we sit there as we're doing a lot of work generating assets for LED walls for shows and for broadcast. We're generating things for AR. We're generating cinematic pieces for video games, animation pieces. I would throw that in there as well. And that's very, very interesting to me, because that's a whole new deliverable a lot of times. Like, up until this point, for the last 20 years, when it comes down to the end of the day, we deliver frames. Like, we deliver rendered frames. We've never done anything else. I mean, there's other backups and stuff that we do, but now this is a different deliverable. It's an Unreal level that is optimized to play back on a wall, or play back in an AR application for real-time tracking. So that's another level of expertise that we've been working on. We've been doing a lot of work, and that goes everywhere. It goes into, sports, broadcasting, live broadcasting, LED walls for dramatic TV shows, which is kind of the hot ticket. The thing about that we've noticed for broadcast, and the thing that really does shock people when they first kind of get into it, is moving a process of finaling visual effects that kind of operated in its own zone between post and the studio and the visual effects company, of iteration, and flexibility, and then like, oh, well, it's not quite there yet, or we didn't get the cut, or there's changes to the cut, can we have some more time? And so there's a lot of flexibility at the end of the process. Virtual production assets need to be absolutely 100% approved by when you shoot. And that is a challenge that everybody's facing right now, is moving this process up into prep and kind of wrapping your head around what that really is and what that really means. And for, bigger broadcast shows that have standing sets, or sports applications, or event applications, these things, are prepping months ahead of time. And it's
fix it in pre.
Yeah, it's not the same as like, constructing a set,
right?
Which is the allegory for that. But we're doing a ton of work there. We are not yet, just because of the changing of the technology and the expense, operating our own LED wall facilities.
Right.
We are a content provider, expert at generating, assets for walls. We're working with Universal. We're working with Fox. We're working, with tons and tons of people on tons of shows, and it's been really exciting. But there's that kind of traditional virtual production piece, and then the third part of the triangle is, what we're calling Final Pixel, and what the future of rendering images out of a real-time environment that can be used as final composites or go straight to broadcast. Now, animation, that's kind of an easier one. You can already see that there's shows that are being done in real-time software, and there are some integrations to a real-time in the current linear pipeline software that allow for faster rendering. But we're looking at iteration speeds. We're looking at combining task groups and kind of condensing the pipeline, if you will, because one of the things that really happens in real time is the ability for a compositor that's savvy to open the file, make a lighting change, maybe change a keyframe or two of the animation, address their own note, pop it into the render, and go around comping on their merry way. So it's really collapsing one of the biggest log jams in visual effects, which is creative iteration, sending material all the way up to the top of a linear pipeline, and having it slide back down through all of the different departments. We operate and we're doing what everybody else does, which is we're automating that as much as possible, so that if there's a lighting note that doesn't affect animation, and the animator doesn't have to open it and send it down to the next, to the next, to the next. That should flow all the way through, like train cars connected to an engine. But we all know that sometimes it ends up getting done by hand, and as much as you want, you may not get what it's expected. So, right now, I think this is where we are really on the cutting edge of everything. We have a show right now that we're doing that has a ton of green screen backgrounds of a completely virtual environment that we're rendering all real time, all through Unreal. We're converting some of our stock effects, that include even things like, lighting gags and particle gags and energy gags, into Unreal. And, it's funny because another thing that's happening is, as AR, VR, LED walls, all this stuff around real-time video games is kind of, the metaverse is soaking into the popular consciousness.
Yep.
We're getting a lot of shows that are asking us to represent what the metaverse is going to look like. It's kind of like this, like if you think about it too much, your head will just pop off. But
right.
like we're using these real-time tools to visualize what people think the real-time information is going to look like 10, 20 years from now, because that's on the forefront of everybody's.
But you're already doing it.
Mind. Right, exactly. But we're already using the tools that they're going to do that, to do it, but it's not really it. So so that's kind of a funny aside. But the ability of using it as a production tool and using it to connect, like we're really are really moving on all cylinders to, and we're not. I don't think we're overly ambitious. We're not, forget Maya, forget Houdini. We're just going to go on Unreal Engine. We love the work we do with Unreal Engine. There's a lot currently that is, digital content, DCCs, that we need to make our linear pipeline work. And what we're really about is using, the engine to enhance communication, get the iterative process going, and render faster, when we can. But, you can see that, for a lot of the material that we do, it's headed in a direction where I don't see it going less. I see it going more, significantly more. And there's a lot of support that we get, from, Epic in particular, that has been, we get a lot of support from, Chaos Group and a lot of the other people that we work with. But, and that's great. Those relationships between the video, the developers of the software and the visual effects facilities is really important. And, I put Epic definitely in that slot of those that are really involved and really hands-on. Chaos Group as well. They've been, you guys know we do a lot of stuff with that's very specific, that's been super helpful. And we, as a visual effects company of our size, it means a lot to us. We're kind of in that medium size, and because of that and the work we do things a little bit differently, and it's always good to get that help, from the development side.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's I will, first of all, thank you. We always try to do that, but it was very, as you were talking about stuff here, and talking about linear workflows and pipelines, and like obviously the thing that I like the most about real time is specifically the iteration and the process that you can do, right? So you can fix things now because you can see them now. And I remember specifically, and this is ancient history, but this is back when I was at Sony, and they were working on Polar Express, and one of the things they wanted to do is say, okay, the Christmas tree has too many balls on it, it's too busy, it's distracting, can we just remove like these 4 balls from the Christmas tree? And it's like, no problem. It's like, well, when can I see it again? 1 week.
Yeah.
because they had to go all the way down this pipeline just to remove 4 balls. Like, that's insane.
Yeah, yeah.
So now you just remove 4 balls. You're done.
Well, yeah, and it's the note turnaround, as well. If you think about it, there's a shot and you're on the ocean and there's 2 ships and you kind of got to decide, the camera's moving in between the 2 ships, like what the speed of the camera is and how close they are together.
Right.
And even if you're doing like a play blast, you're not rendering it all the way, play blast, upload the quick times, get everybody on, get us in a sync, make a drawing, cool, spend another day, upload the quick times. Oh, they're on set that day. 2 days later, you look at it again. Oh, it's a little bit closer, but so next thing you know, a week's gone by, and I just because that's my thing, is I love communicating with people and solving visual stuff through visual effects.
Right.
I just love it because it's just like I do all my presentations in Engine with the editor open, and just run it. And then move it, and then run it again, and then move it, and then run it again. And there's certain shots that we've done over the years, like especially when they're like, you read them in the script, and the camera starts and slowly, pans over, then pushes down, then goes under the water, and then goes through the, you got all these these giant, really cool shots. And it used to be like, well, this is going to be really great when it's finished, but oh my goodness, is this going to be a process to get this done? And especially taking something that's words on a page and making it visual, and this visualization part of the real time just makes it so much more iterative. I mean, I feel like when I do this, like I'm addressing what normally would be, rounds, potentially dozens of rounds of notes and a lot of frustration in like that much time. And right now, the creators are very grateful because they're used to managing their own expectations about how many bites at the apple they get.
Right. Yeah.
Soon it'll become, that's just the way that we do it now. Nobody won't appreciate it as much. So I'm riding high on that.
Yeah, it's like I've been saying, is like I want to make decisions when my mouse finger is still down, and then I decided what I want when it's up, and not have to go through 117 versions of the light bike sequence on one shot that I did. Right. It was ridiculous. But you did bring up a good point about the creators. I mean, for a long time, I have felt that, let's put it in perspective. In the Life of Pi days, there was a lot of backlash towards computer graphics, specifically from people in the production side, because we were this black box that they would give their things into and they would get things out of it, and they didn't really know what was going to come out of it. Now that you have started doing things in real time and you're showing things in real time to them, and they're involved in the decision making and seeing the process a little bit more with you, do you feel that suddenly they're more excited about what's going on?
I think so. And I mean, and also there's been a good amount of time that's passed since then where they, everybody kind of knows that. I mean, it's interesting because there's 2 parts to the visual effects puzzle, right? Like the first part is a creative and things that you can do that you in visual effects you couldn't do, otherwise, like have a tiger on a boat with a person. But then, especially in broadcast, there's a certain amount of it that you might have a shot at doing practically if you had, the time and the money to do it and to rig it all up and to build it all, but it's just impractical because of the scope of it, and you need visual effects to help out. And I think that that's really where we can, make the most inroads and make, friends. Zoic has been pretty good. I mean, it does, like, you get into this issue of stepping on people's toes, like. The production designer is still the production designer. The director of photography is still the director of photography. And that's part of the communication, is respecting, their part of the process. And I think that in the past, I think you're right, having it, even if you made the right decision or the decision that they would have made, since it wasn't happening and they didn't have any agency in the process, there's a certain amount of resentment there.
Right.
A lot of times, what's happening now is, broadcast tends to be very executive producer driven. Sometimes that executive producer is the head of the writer's room. Sometimes they're a director. Sometimes they might share those duties. But a lot of times the individual directors who come in to shoot an episode of broadcast television, streaming or not, are in and they're out, and they don't have a lot of time or the edit room part of the process. There's a lot of decisions are being made. This is an opportunity for them to really make their mark and design the stuff that they're gonna design. And also, a lot of times we'll go through and you have a lot more interactivity with the directors. I was just on a call with a director, right before this call, talking about a bunch of visualization we did and the practicality of shooting it. It's a really great tool because it's all scaled and all the cameras are simulated to see that, and then also, a lot of times I'll hand it off to the DP to take a look at and say, this is what we're doing, how does this affect your lighting decisions? What can we do? Is it worth going back into the scene to, adjust the lighting or change the direction or change the character of the lighting or change the color temperature, so, they're, the DP in a broadcast often comes back into the process during the color session, and they're seeing things for the very first time that they haven't had a lot of opportunity to look at, and a lot of decisions have been made outside, but this kind of bridges that gap. So, yeah. And I think that, call it what you will, the metaverse, the spatialization of the internet and computer graphics, but the way that it operates, and since so many people now have had experience, playing Fortnite with their kids or playing Minecraft with their kids, like they know what this is and they see it and interact with it as if it is really there.
Right.
Which is an important different thing because, a lot of my career up until this point was explaining things that weren't really there and you can't really see, and what we're going to do, to make sure that it ggets there on time and on budget. Sure.
Sure.
And this is a much more tactile process.
Yeah, I totally agree. One of the things that I've been very excited about real-time technology and where it's going, specifically, in a sense, to me, it's the way that I can interact with everything at the same time, and that multiple people can interact with things at the same time, I think is also an exciting part of it.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I'm sort of looking for in labs, and and part of the thing is getting the ray tracing part of it as also being part of the real-time experience. So because I was sort of joking. I was like, I try to say that in 2006 was the last shadow map I ever had to render.
Right.
And I don't want to be forced into rasterized rendering again. But I do see the value in rasterized rendering for real-time experience. And I do think that eventually this is going to be replaced by ray tracing. Because that's the way it happened in the past. We eventually had to get rid of rasterized rendering when it was offline to full ray tracing. And I think that's what's going to happen. So I'm excited to see when that starts to happen, and that's sort of one of the things.
It definitely is exciting, and I think everybody knows that that's you see so much development focused on that. But yeah, that is a big hurdle that'll come through especially because of where we are with LED walls. I mean, a lot of the job is optimization, a lot of it. And it does feel like a little bit, of a little old school, like you're like I think there's a comfort, like it's so funny, Chris, because like we get two different kind of artists that really connect with real time. Mm-hmm. Like I said, new people who come in and that's all they know, and they know a lot about the engine, and they're really excited about it, and they just like creating, it's have that instantaneous creating. It's all they've ever known, and they're really good at it, and they're really fast. Right. And then you get the other group, and it's about a 50-50 split, myself included, of people who've been working in the industry a long time and like the hands-on, and there's so many things, so many tricks that we learned in those rasterization days and camera projection days that we had to do because we didn't have time to ray trace. We just had to get the shots out that are relevant to optimizing for real time. And so that experience, I think, for us that are coming from that side of our career trajectory, is they feel like they're bringing a lot of value.
Sure.
You know what I mean? They feel like they're bringing a lot of value, and their experience on that is something that they can impart to younger generations. So and it's definitely a good feeling for sure.
Well, that's really exciting. Now we're getting close to the end, so I want to make sure you have an opportunity to tell us if there are any exciting things that we can look forward to at Zoic, or is there any job opportunities that people need to know about, or any of things of those natures?
I mean, the industry is in a point right now where there is so much demand and there's so many cool projects that are out there. We're continuing to work on the type of work that you think from Zoic Studios. We're working on a lot of Freelancing shows for the CW. We're on Flash. We're on Stargirl. We're on Legends of Tomorrow. We're going into a new season of Sweet Tooth. We're doing a lot of work that I can't talk about from a lot of other people that do things like comic books and other TV shows that you've known about. We are hiring on all cylinders. We're hiring from the top levels down. I think everybody would say, and I think that the one thing that I could say, the one pitch that I can, since you're giving me a pitch for our recruiting effort here, is that people who do well at Zoic and who like coming to Zoic Studios are people who like to be involved in the process, that have agency, that like to be able to move, that like to be able to contribute to pipeline and process and really be hands-on. We still keep a core group of folks that stay to the show. We do pool some, so our animation departments, our map painting departments, but the compositors and the lighters, the supervisor and the producer for each show really becomes a team and a family and knows that show, very, very well. And that's why, sometimes you're working on a fairy tale, sometimes you're working on a vampire, sometimes you're working on a spaceship. We're kind of, we're very, very broad in our creative approach. And, we love new team members. We always are, trying to make that balance of people who have been around before. And a special shout out to anybody who's worked with us in the past on a project basis and wants to come back again. I mean, that's always such a joy for me to 20 years at Zoic, seeing folks that I really enjoyed working with who finished their project and then went on to other things and come back and we can work together again. Any old friends out there, I'd love to see you again.
Well, that's great. It sounds like you guys are doing some amazing work. Obviously, you're really thinking about the future of all of filmmaking itself, which I think is really exciting.